About intermittent fasting, but before we do, let's just open with a little word of prayer. Dear Lord, thank you so much that we can be here in person and on live stream. Let's be able to learn ways to become more healthy, because that's what you want for all of us. You said in John 10:10 that you want us to have abundant life. And please give that to us and help us achieve that by the things that we learned, dear Lord. In your name, amen. Okay, so first we're going to have Jamie and her mother show us how to make and then eat healthy donuts.
Okay, so the first thing I'll share with you is, this is a vegan cookbook, actually, called Oh She Glows. And I really like this. I'm not totally vegan. I'm trying to get there. I'm probably 80% there. But the recipes in here are very simple. I've made quite a few of them in here. And one of them that I love is the out-the-door chia power donuts. And what I love about them most is I have a sweet tooth. And so somehow I have to curb that. And this is one way to do it. So these donuts are made, they don't have sugar in them. They sweeten them with maple syrup. So at least what sugar you are getting is a natural form of sugar. So I've measured everything out ahead of time just to make it a little bit quicker. So the first thing is it calls for 3/4 cup of oat flour. You can buy oat flour at the store, but I choose to just put my oats inside of my Vitamix and turn it on high until it's a powdery form and you have oat flour. So it's pretty easy and you don't have leftover, and I don't use it a lot. So if I bought it, it may go bad. And then it calls for half a cup of chia seeds. These donuts are made, they don't have sugar, chia power donuts. Okay, and then 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder. And then 1/4 teaspoon each of sea salt and cinnamon. It's really actually an easy recipe. And then I just mix the dry ingredients around, get the chia seeds all mixed up in there. And then the liquid stuff I measured at home. So this is 1/3 cup of non-dairy milk. I choose the unsweetened soy milk because it's a little thicker consistency than almond milk or coconut or oat milk. They seem a little more watery. And then 1/3 cup of maple syrup. I like getting my maple syrup locally, but lately I've been getting it at Costco. Their Kirkland maple syrup is really good. And then a teaspoon of vanilla.
So is that the reason why it was a little brownish color? Because of the maple syrup with the...
Yeah, it's probably the reason they do. I would say so. And well, you can see the chia seeds in them. They're kind of black, but yeah, I think the maple syrup probably turns them brown. So I just mix it around just until there's no flour at the bottom. It's really easy. And it actually is kind of a thick soup consistency once you get it mixed up. And then the donut pans are easy, Amazon. They deliver anything and everything. But I got 2 of these, I think for under $20, and they're the Wilton brand. And I just spray a little bit of spray in them. I use it pretty much for everything, and I get these at Costco too. They come in like a 2-pack. But you got me hooked on those. I think you are.
The one thing she needs to remind you is not let that dough sit. We did that today.
Oh, we did do that today. So I thought I would make, fair warning here. I thought I would make a double batch. So I did, and I only have 2 pans, but I wanted to make 4 pans. So I filled both pans and put them in the oven. They baked for 20, 25 minutes. I took them out, and when I went back to my bowl, and I should have known this, the chia seeds had absorbed all the liquid, and it was like thick dough in the bowl. So when you do mix this up, only mix the amount you need for the pans that you have, because then it won't work. Good point.
Yeah, I wanted to remind you of that.
Yeah. So then I just use a spoon and go around, just kind of dump it into each one. I do like 2 spoonfuls, and it flows around to where it needs to go. The oven would be set on 300. You would think making a donut would be intimidating, but really, it's quick and easy.
So that recipe was just enough for the 6.
So the one recipe, and I think it says that in the actual recipe, it makes 6 donuts, which is perfect for me. And I do keep some in the refrigerator, and you can grab them. And they're actually good without the glaze on them. But anyway, that's it. That's what they look like. And you put them in the oven. It says 22 to 26 minutes, but they're always done in 21 minutes for me. And then the other thing that she says, it's optional, and I do it, and I have the glaze back here. She has a recipe in here for coconut lemon whipped cream. And so if you go to the back of her book here, and I'll pull up to it, I take a full fat can of coconut milk and put it upside down in the refrigerator. I actually keep them in my refrigerator in case I need them. And then when you open it, you drain the liquid off of it. You use 1 can of coconut milk, 2 tablespoons of maple syrup, and I think it was a half a teaspoon of vanilla, and then I put a tablespoon of lemon juice in it. And it just gives it a bright flavor, and I love that. And this is my, I don't like the little icing bags, so I cut a corner off of my bag. This is probably not going to be that easy. And then I just start going across the donuts. Just like that. Right out of the Ziploc bag.
Looks good.
That looks awesome.
What do you think, Josh?
Looks good.
Are you glad you waited for the...
Yes.
And they actually make a nice presentation if you're serving them. Now, if these are warm right out of the oven, this just kind of melts down, and you just get left with a faded white line. So if they're warm, what I like to do is, even in these little bowls, is put those in and serve it that way, and then you can dip the donut into it if you want.
Oh. I like that.
Yeah. And so I will tell you, if you are a Krispy Kreme or a Bill's Donut fan, this is not it. This is not it, my friends. This is not what you're looking at here. But the thing of it is I stopped eating a lot of the sugary sweet stuff just to reset my taste buds. And so these are plenty sweet for me. And once you kind of get used to eating things that aren't super sweet, fruit becomes more sweet, and things like this become sweet. So I hope you enjoy them. They're different, but for me, they are a donut. So, yeah.
Very good, very good.
Very good.
Awesome. Can we try one?
You can absolutely test them. I want you to, and be honest. Does anybody have questions?
You said you keep them in your fridge?
I do. I put them in a Ziploc bag, and actually the ones that, so when I messed that batch up this morning and it was really thick, I added a bunch more soy milk in it and stirred it around until I could get it in the pan, and I did bake them, and I put those 6 in my freezer, and they weren't bad. I mean, chia seeds, they were just filled with the fluid, so they were a little more chewy, but actually they were still overall pretty good. What do you think, Josh? You good? Yeah. Well, she calls them out the door chia power donuts or something like that. So, and they are. You can just grab them.
Very good.
I had some, and I take them to work in a Ziploc bag, and I just stick them in the microwave for 10 or 15 seconds, and they get nice and warm and soft. And
Especially good straight out.
Yeah.
Warm. And
Yeah.
just dip them in the ice.
yeah, right.
Coat them.
Yeah, coat them in the whipped
Yeah.
topping, or. Yeah, she has a lot of really nice recipes in here if you have a sweet tooth that just kind of helps you to alternatives to sweetening things, and it helps.
It reminds me a lot of like the overnight oats. That's one of my big things, but this is easier to travel.
I love overnight oats. She does a lot with chia seeds in here. As a matter of fact, probably one of my go-to things, and it took my husband a little bit. I mean, I think he likes it, but if you like putting jam or jelly on your toast, she has a recipe in here that you can use frozen strawberries or frozen blueberries. I do the blueberry, and right on your stovetop, you just mix blueberries and maple syrup, and you stir it around with a little vanilla, and then I forget how long you cook it for anyway. At the end, you stir in the chia seeds and then just leave it till it's completely cooled. The chia seeds soak up all that blueberry juice, and I just put it in a jar, screw the lid on, and set it in the fridge, and put one in the freezer. And they thaw out beautifully, but it's a great jam that's not loaded with sugar. It's really good. So she has some really nice recipes in here. That her overnight oats are good. I like them too.
I've noticed when I cut sugar out, when I go to eat a banana, it's almost like a
Georgia, yeah.
Oh,
Very sweet.
you're like, oh, I can have fruit for dessert if I can just stay away from the sugary stuff.
Reset your taste buds.
Yeah.
The fruit's like so sweet.
yeah, bananas are actually sometimes really sweet. Yeah.
Especially if they get really, really
Yeah.
ripe. That's when the sugar really comes out.
We've gotten to the point we do a lot of that for desserts. Things like we'll do fresh fruit or dates and pecans and apple. I'll cut up an apple and a few dates and pecans, and it really works. You know, once you've reset your taste buds. It's not cheesecake. If you sit this next to a Bill's donut or cheesecake next to date, you know, it doesn't compare. So you do have to, I feel like, reset your taste buds. But you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so once again, thanks to Jamie and her mom. That was awesome. Wish you guys were here to try it. But tonight we're going to talk about intermittent fasting. Now, there's some benefits to it. I'm just going to go over these pretty quickly here. Behaviorally, it's easy to implement. You can combine it with any other diet program, so it's easy. It can be an add-on to your lifestyle changes. It reduces hunger over time. Basically, you will shrink your stomach down, and we'll talk about this other hormone called leptin. It increases your leptin level, which actually makes you biochemically less hungry. Also, physiologically, it reduces your blood pressure, reduces glucose spikes, which then reduces insulin spikes, and then reduces your cholesterol levels as well. Finally, it's going to help you lose weight, it's going to help you lose visceral fat, and it preserves lean muscle mass. One of the big things people talk about when you fast is that, are you going to waste your muscles first? Typically, you're going to burn your fat off. Now, there's a couple different programs. One is called 5-2. Now, who started 5-2? Actually, if you read in the Bible in Luke 18, the Pharisee stood by himself and prayed, God, I think I'm not like these other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and get a tenth of all I get. So the interesting thing is fasting has been here religiously for 2,000 years. Science has now just really caught up to it. Also, for the people in the SDA church, E.G. White actually started fasting herself, and she lost what she called 25 pounds of flesh. So she ate breakfast, had a late lunch, shut it down, and then basically lost 25 pounds just by doing intermittent fasting. She did the early version of the time-restricted fasting. Now, what you eat and if you fast, that's not really a salvation issue. There's a very interesting survey done by the SDA Church, and actually about 23 people and strongly agree, and 24% agree that what you eat has an impact on if you're going to make it to heaven or not. The church doesn't really believe that, but some people are very stringent on what they do, and that can cause some friction, but we don't believe in that. Now, there's a theory about how intermittent fasting works, and one of it is what David Sinclair, and I'm going to show his slide next, calls the information theory of aging. Have you ever thought about why you age? If your DNA makes a perfect copy of itself and you rebuild your cells all the time, your cells should be the same. But we all know that as we get older, gray hair, wrinkles, less collagen, bad eyesight, all these things happen to us. And what he thinks is that as we keep making copies of our DNA, the copies are, he has some erroneous copies, and also the DNA repair mechanisms don't work as well, so you keep making worse and worse copies of yourself. And then you make worse and worse versions of your cells, and you become old. That's how we age. Highly recommend this book called Lifespan. And he goes over a bunch of scientific data, but what's very interesting is there are some stimuli that help preserve your DNA better than other stimuli, and the ones that he found were intermittent fasting, exercise, and cold exposure. And we're going to hit a couple of those tonight. Now, what they talk about is kind of flipping the metabolic switch. This was a term coined by Dr. Matheson, and basically it's a low-level stress. You exercise, then you rest, you're awake, then you go to sleep, you fast, and then you eat. And this back and forth actually changes your body's metabolism and gives you a low-level stress that's actually going to help your body handle bigger stress later on. Now, here's one of the first big studies showing how effective intermittent fasting is. Now, this is a study that used what we call time-restricted fasting. They actually ate for less than 10 hours and fasted for 14 hours. And what you can see on this graphic over here, these people already were treated for diabetes and high blood pressure. They had a metabolic syndrome. And what they found is after just doing this for 3 months, they had decrease in body weight, decrease in waist circumference, so the visceral fat went down, blood pressure, bad cholesterol, hemoglobin A1C all went down as well, and the sleep improved slightly. Now, the interesting thing about this study was they said do not change the quality of your diet and do not exercise. The only thing they did in this study was change the timing of how they ate. And it had a huge impact in just 3 months. Pretty easy to do. Now, fasting has been so popular, they actually published a review article in the New England Journal of Medicine, which is probably the most prestigious medical journal we have. So I can go over some of the slides here. One thing I really want to point out here is intermittent fasting improves your stress resistance, but also to your brain increases what we call BDNF, that's brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And that's something that actually repairs your brain, helps you make better neurons, myelinates your neurons, so it actually helps your brain grow. It's like what they call miracle grow for your brain. Only 2 things do that we know of right now. One is intermittent fasting. The other thing is exercise. So there's 2 ways to really help your memory and improve your cognition. So it's really good for your brain. Now, another thing to think about is not just fasting for food, but fasting for all the other things that we can expose ourselves to. There's a great Bible verse. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about those things, Philippians 4:8. So not only can we fast from food, but we can fast from our cell phones, fast from, violent movies, pornography. There's all sorts of things that you can get off of to clear your brain off, and that'd be a good thing for you. Now, the easiest way to fast is to sleep. So in the time-restricted fasting, you want to get up to eventually 16 hours of not eating. If you sleep 8 hours, that's half your time, so half the battle's already won. And that's important because in America, about 1/3 of people do not get enough sleep. So depending on your age, we should all be getting from 7 to 9 hours of sleep. The older you are, the less you need. The younger you are, the more you need. And this is totally prevalent in high school kids. They're basically not eating breakfast, living off of caffeine, and then going to school. So there's a better way to be healthy. Now, this study was really interesting, and what it showed is for every hour, if you look at the bottom two clocks, for every hour that you sleep less, you actually increase your heart attack risk by 19%. For every hour you sleep more, you actually decrease your heart attack risk by 20%. It's almost perfectly balanced. We almost never see that in studies. So getting more sleep, good for your brain, good for your heart, good for your overall health. Makes sense. So we should actually try to do that more often. Now, a lot of people will say, I don't want to sleep. If I don't sleep, I'm going to burn more calories. I'm going to lose weight. Extra stress is good. Let's get some more stress. This is a great study where they actually had people, they kept them up on purpose. And what they found is that night while they were awake and the next day, they ate like over 1,000 calories more. And they have a couple of features of why that is. One is your willpower is down. When you don't sleep, next day you're tired, you have no willpower. If there's something good in front of you, you're going to eat it. The other thing they found out is that the reward centers in your brain are activated. And so when you're tired, you want to reward yourself. And we've all done this, right? We've all said to ourselves, I deserve it. I stayed up late. I worked hard. I'm going to eat that donut or eat the chia seed donut, whatever you want to call it. So in that way, you seek out worse food the next day. Also in this graph, you can see the black bar on the far right side. Oh, let me run over here. Right here. And we all know this too. When you're trying to stay awake at night, what do? You nibble, you snack. So the people that are staying awake, they had an extra 1,000 calories overnight staying awake. Then the next day, they ate worse food because they deserved it. All right, so staying awake, losing sleep is not a good strategy for losing weight. Now, putting all these kind of stressful things together, the low-level stress, actually makes a big impact on Alzheimer's. So there's a great book called Spark about exercise and the mind. But when they look at David Sinclair's research and the research here, a couple things line out really well. And basically, exercise also releases BDNF to rebuild your brain. Sleep. When we sleep, we call that consolidating information. People that are well rested, they can pull things from parts of the different brain and make connections. If you're tired, you can't connect any dots. And that's why it's really important for our kids to sleep. They're learning a ton of stuff, but they cannot consolidate that info unless they get good sleep. The next thing is when we're talking about IF, intermittent fasting, that also produces BDNF, and that also makes your brain work better. A whole food plant-based diet is good for your brain. And being at the ideal weight, they've looked at this multiple times now, being obese actually makes your brain smaller on quantitative MRI scans. So these are the ways to make your brain work better. And then also, very interesting, all these same things seem to help you resist COVID. So if you want a better immune system, want better brain function, want to live longer, and you want to age slower, these are some of the strategies you want to use. Now, the other thing that's really important about intermittent fasting is probably the number one reason diet plans get blown up is because you get hangry. And you're like, I'm sick of this plan. I'm going to eat something. And then you jump off the wagon, so you're saying, I'm just going to blow the whole program up because I already blew it. Now, they had this study where they measured the hunger hormones before, during, and after people have lost significant weight, and they kept it off for 2 years. And what they found is even 2 years later, things like ghrelin and these other hunger hormones were still elevated even 2 years later. So even though you had stable weight loss or doing great, you're still biochemically hungry. So that's very difficult to fight against. Now, the great thing is when you have intermittent fasting, you produce something called leptin. All right, leptin tells your brain to not be hungry. Now, if you look at the very top here, leptin, fasting, cold exposure, Sinclair talked about that as well. These are all things that increase your leptin production and it tells your brain you don't have to eat, you're not hungry. What's also very interesting here is beta blockers. Probably a lot of people either are personally on or know someone who's on a beta blocker. We try to get people off of that if it's doable. because that medication is one that's famous for making you tired and gaining weight. And not just because it lowers your heart rate, so you're burning less calories, your metabolism's down, it actually because it blocks leptin production. So you actually be more biochemically hungry if you're on a beta blocker. So one big thing that people talk about is intermittent fasting versus keto. So actually, the strategies for both, or the goal for both, is the same. If you're on the keto diet, you want to burn fat, not muscle. Intermittent fasting is a way to try to burn fat as well. What's really interesting is we'll talk about keto first. You have a lot of early weight loss on the keto diet. That's mostly because you lose water. For every molecule of carbohydrate that goes into your gut and gets transferred into your body, it takes 4 water molecules. So you're going to lose water weight immediately by cutting out your carbs. The biggest thing in the keto diet is not eating high fat, it's low bad carbs. American diet's about 60% processed carbs. You drop those, regardless of what else you do, you're going to lose weight. Because the processed carbs are chips, pretzels, soda pop, juice. If you knock those out, you're going to do a lot better anyway. This is the biggest problem for people that I see, because I'm a cardiologist, is a lot of people do keto, they do it wrong, and their cholesterol goes to the moon, and that causes problems, increased chance of heart attack, stroke, etc. The other thing that's very interesting is a lot of people on the keto diet, they don't even measure if they're ketotic. So they don't even know if they're actually achieving the goal of the diet. So unless your friend or yourself, unless you're checking your blood or checking your urine for ketones, you really don't know if you're ketotic enough to get the benefit you're hoping for. Now, in comparison, intermittent fasting, it physically shrinks your stomach because you're having long periods of not eating. So your stomach shrinks down. That means you get full faster. Full faster, you're going to eat less. You have increased leptin, which in the long run is going to make you biochemically less hungry. So you're going to eat less. And it's associated with a survival benefit. And then sounds crazy, but about 8 hours of fasting gives you some little benefit. Now, it's probably very minimal, but you have to do more, and the more you do, the bigger benefit you get here. Now, I'm going to look over all the data for performance as well. Now, if you're riding a bike or running long distance or working out hard with weights, you're going to need carbs. But if you eat good carbs, you're going to be in good shape. Carbs is the best way to get energy to your muscles quickly. Fat is not. Fat is a slow burn, and you don't get that much ATP out of your fat initially. And eating protein is the best for muscle gain, and that kind of goes back to why people like keto. Now, the other thing, keto is kind of trendy and cool. And if you think about this, Atkins, paleo, keto is all about the same. And the important thing is you cannot sell an old idea and make money off of it. So you kind of have to repackage it. And that's what's been done about 3 different times here. So 3 different people can make money off these very, very similar diets. Now, the internet, social media, those are terrible places to get information. So I just went to PubMed, which is where all the published literature is. And if you look at keto diet plus performance, there's 617 articles published on it compared to 21,000 for intermittent fasting. So much more research has been done on intermittent fasting and performance in sports. If you look at fat loss, which is probably what most people care about, keto has 301 articles, intermittent fasting 2,311. And I just updated that this week. So the amount of data, the amount of help you can get, the amount of good science you can get is way stronger in the intermittent fasting camp. I'm going to skip this for time here. Now, just to go back and talk about keto a little bit more here, it's not just low carb or low fat that's really good for you. And this is going to be kind of hard to see. But on column A, on the far left side, they're talking about unhealthy low carb diets. And what you can see is most of the dots are on the right side of that line, which means you do worse, have a higher risk of dying by having low carb, but you're having low quality carb diet. Now, the same thing goes for fat. On the right side, if you're having a low fat but bad quality diet, same thing, the dots on the right side of that line means your mortality is increased. In comparison, if you have a healthy low carb diet, all the dots are on the left side, which means you're going to live longer. Here, if you have a healthy low fat diet, all the dots are on the left side and you're going to live longer as well. So it's not so much low carb, high fat, high protein. It's the quality of your actual diet that you eat. The better food you eat, the better you're going to do, the longer you're going to live. Now I'm going to overcome the stimulus response. These are the stressors and the stress levels that you need to get to have an impact. So calorie restriction, you should feel hungry. If you're never hungry, you're not restricting your calories enough. And the minimal dose in the studies, if you cut your caloric intake by 10% per day, you actually lose weight and make a difference. Now, you can overdose and you can starve yourself, so don't recommend that. Intermittent fasting, you should actually get to the point where you are hungry as well. Like we talked about before, 8-hour fast is the minimum. Most people think you need at least probably 14 hours if you're doing time restricted. Or if you're doing 5-2 or every other day, you need about 8 days a month, or 5 days a month, where you're fasting. And that's enough of a stimulus to have a benefit for your body. Now, exercise, when you're walking, even if you walk 15 minutes a day continuously, not broken up like at work, but if you walk 15 minutes a day continuously, that will decrease your mortality. But you should be a little bit tacky, your heart should be a little bit faster than normal, you should be a little bit short of breath, and you should be a little bit sweaty. You don't have to be jogging and in a full sweat, but just a little bit normal, a little bit outside your comfort zone is enough to qualify. Like I said, 10 or 15 minutes continuous, and then basically if you exercise too much, you can get injured or have what we call overtraining syndrome, which we're not going to talk about. Cold exposure, we didn't talk about this at all, but if you go outside in the cold, you should be out there until you're shivering a little bit or have some goosebumps. That's enough of a cold exposure. Then come back inside, get warm. Sleep, basically the minimum for even the oldest people is about 6 hours. And like if you're younger, you should be going for about 9 hours. Excuse me. So we're going over 3 different major types of intermittent fasting and the plans. On the first left column is what I call alternate day fasting. Every other day you fast. Water, coffee is okay. Coffee with creamer is okay. Coffee with sugar, probably want to avoid. And you can start off with 1 day a week. After a month or so, you're used to it. Go 2 days a week, then go 2 or 3 days a week. And that's probably the target goal. For the 5-2 program, most of the American diet average is really about 3,000 calories a day. You should be getting around 2,000 for most people. But initially, you can cut down to 1,500 calories 1 time a week, then maybe cut it down to 1,000 calories 1 time a week, then 1,000 calories 2 times a week, maybe a month or 2 later, and then finally get to the goal, which is about 500 calories 2 times a week. And that's enough of a stimulus to have an impact from fasting. Finally, the one that's probably the most popular because it's the most easy one is time-restricted fasting. And basically, you can start off with like 12 hours eating, then 12 hours fasting, and do that 5 times a week. On the weekends, who cares? Then you kind of go slowly to 14 hours a day fasting for 5 days a week. Then you go to 16 hours, 5 days a week. And then you go to 16 hours, 6 times a week. And that's kind of the way you can slowly progress into this program without getting really hungry, really getting hangry, and then blowing up the whole program. All right. Oh, my video's not working. The mouse is actually doing push-ups with the mousetrap. But basically, stress leads to growth. So if you push yourself outside of your comfort zone a little bit, then you're going to get the benefit. And like we talked about, the big factors are exercise, rest, eat, fast, be awake, and sleep, or cold exposure and get warm. These things can all help make your DNA work better and make you age slower. So to live long and prosper here, train like an athlete, eat like a nutritionist, sleep like a baby, and also fast a little bit. All right, thank you for your attention. Any questions? Yes?
For that study on intermittent fasting, what age group did they do? Was it all exclusively adults?
Yeah, it was all adults. Now, most of the stuff has been studied in all sorts of animals and adults. I'm not aware of a whole bunch of kids studies, to be honest, because a lot of people do not want to restrict calories in kids. And that might be a factor now because childhood obesity is such a big deal that you have to hit all sorts of strategies to try to control that. Any other questions? My wife is smiling and not going to ask any questions. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Good night.